What is going on, everybody? We're live. It is Sunday afternoon at 12 p.m. Just kind of got nothing going on. So I figured, what the hell? Let's come on here. I know I tried to go live over the past couple of nights, but wasn't much interest. And honestly, I was exhausted on Friday night. So that didn't work out. And last night, I don't think many people were around. But regardless, I have nothing to do. I had about an hour and 20 minutes or so before I have to start doing other things today. I'm pretty much footballed out with my team being absolute garbage. Uh, but they're always garbage. It's been a while since they've been good. So I figured, why not? There's a couple topics I figured I'd wanted to talk about today. Some things that's been happening over the past couple of weeks that I think that maybe I can give my opinion on. And I also have some Mark Spears blind bags to open if anybody's interested in that as well. But for today, like I said, we're hanging out, not much going on, and I wanted to kind of just hang out and see who was available. If anybody wanted to jump on as well, they're more than welcome to do so. I've pinned the restream link there if anybody wants to jump on and kind of chat with me today. A bunch of topics I want to cover, including PSA buying Beckett, and then of course CGC's response, and then the PSA population report being live as well. Those are three topics I definitely want to talk about today. But like I said, I also have some Mark Spears blind bags that I picked up last night over at Zap Comics. That was an impromptu visit as well. So I have 5 of them to maybe open later on. But I figured I'd just kind of pop on. I have about an hour, and we're live on Instagram as well, folks. Instagram and YouTube right now. And like I said, it's early. Most people are probably going to watch some football. But like I said, I'm footballed out right now. So like I said, we're just hanging out. I want to say hello to the few people who are in the chat on YouTube. And Luis Mendoza, what is going on, my friend? Phil Ailing, what's going on? Gen X Comics, what is going on, brother? I have a few blind bags too that I need to open. Yeah, man. I wasn't really gonna do these this time around, but I was there last night. I was kind of looking to pick up some spectacular Spider-Man books, believe it or not. If I actually love Spectacular Spider-Man, some of the artwork that was done in the late 80s. And of course, the couple of great first appearances in that run, like Tombstone, that you could still have for cheap, $10 for a really nice high grade copy of an important Spider-Man villain. So I was looking for that last night. They didn't have much that I was really interested in, but I wanted to go at least look through the bins there, which is always fun, at least for me. I like doing that, especially when I'm not going to sit there and go through like dollar bin stuff like that, but a specific run like ASM, Spectacular Spider-Man, maybe Avengers, X-Men, stuff like that. You never know what you're going to find in some of these bins. So I decided to do that last night, and I picked up some of these blind bags as well. We only have 2 people on here. Like I said, I didn't think we'd get many, which is totally fine. It's still on the West Coast. It's 9 o'clock. So some of you guys may still be sleeping. So again, I'll always entertain any questions. And if anybody wants to jump on with me, the link is in the chat. Okay. But where do we start? Let's start with I guess the big news last week is PSA, or the week prior, PSA acquiring Beckett. And somebody posted this, and they're operating as an independent brand. So I thought that was interesting, right? My take, honestly, guys, is that eventually I think everything's going to be under one roof at PSA. I don't think it really behooves them to kind of keep Beckett going long term as its own individual brand. But I would like to pose a question to anybody out there who's either watching this now or maybe watching it on the rewind, is that what is the benefit to PSA for buying Beckett? Like, obviously on the comic end, I don't think there's any benefit. Like, I think CBCS is pretty much dead. They weren't even at any of the bigger cons this year as well. So I think they knew maybe the end was near, not going to a lot of these shows. And even in prior years, I'm not sure if it benefited them. I don't know how many submissions they got, stuff like that. I'd love to hear from anybody out there, whether in the comments or in the chat today, if you use CBCS at all. If you have, when was the last time you've used them as well? But for PSA, I don't see the value in buying Beckett. Now, on the card side, maybe there's a little bit more they're getting from the brand. Like, I know the Black Series and the Black Label is still a big deal to card collectors. But outside of that, I don't know. And then we talk about the scandal that just happened over at PSA. Maybe that's the wrong term to use in scandal. Maybe that's not the word I want to use. But Of course, rebuying cards that have been, recently graded by them, and then possibly regrading them themselves and bumping up the grades, all that fun stuff. I'm sure everybody has heard about it already. So obviously there's a lot going on with PSA right now regarding cards. And I know the Congress is going to step in. We saw that post by somebody. I don't know who exactly it was, but Neo covered it on his channel about the feds kind of getting involved and seeing what is going on, if there's an issue there that needs their attention. But I don't know. Regardless, I don't see the benefit here of PSA buying Beckett, but we don't know what they paid. That's the next thing, right? Maybe there's just like a small fee. Maybe they're going to take on some employees that Beckett currently has. That is always a possibility. Whatever one company buys another, there may be some employees that are with that original company that may want to have in their arsenal over at PSA. I don't know. So we don't have any really details about this. So outside of what I just mentioned, I don't see the value for PSA going ahead and buying Beckett, but we'll see what shakes out. Okay. If anybody wants to comment on this, please do so in the comments or in the chat. But I thought it was kind of a ho hum announcement, to be honest, only because I don't think really Beckett CBCS holds any value at this point. So what I did find was interesting is that CGC kind of clapped back after this announcement. I thought that was funny. And it's really funny that the announcement came from CGC Cards, not CGC Comics. Okay. So we all know, when PSA came over to the comic side, CGC really didn't open their mouth. They really didn't respond to any of the things that PSA was putting out there. Obviously, CGC Comics had a few issues over the past couple of years on their own. Maybe that's why they didn't want to say anything. But here was CGC's response, CGC Card's response to PSA buying Beckett. A message from Steve Eichenbaum. I'm not pronouncing that right, I'm sure. Yesterday's announcement only reinforces what I've been saying for a while. CGC is the clear choice for collectors. We offer fast turnaround times, consistent grading, and the best holders and great customer service. All done with integrity. That's the biggest part of this, okay? CGC is part of the Certified Collectibles Group, which has graded more than 100 million collectibles since 1987, including the CGC 9.0 Superman 1 that recently sold for a world record $9.12 million. We are the world leader in coins, banknotes, comic books, and magazines, and the fastest growing grading service in cards. We not only serve more categories than any other grading service, but also more regions with offices in the US, UK, Europe, UAE, and China. And finally, in my 25 plus years at the helm of this company, I know that change is inevitable. However, when the world changes around us, we focus on the reason we exist, to protect collectors and dealers by providing accurate and impartial grading services. So that was quite the message from the CEO of CGC. And like I said, I find it a little odd that it came from CGC Cards. I understand why it did because of the whole card scandal at PSA, but it's funny that CGC Comics has been quiet, and now the card end they're kind of clapping back a little bit. So I thought that was funny, but good for CGC. You know what? All this shit that they've taken over the past 3 or 4 years, good for them. Let them come back and say something finally, get their mouths open. I really think they should have responded earlier to the other things that have been going on with their own, comic stuff. I'll leave it at that. We all know what they are. We don't need to rehash it here, but good for them. You need to kind of protect your brand, protect your business, stuff like that. So good for them. I'm not a CGC homer and I'm not a PSA homer. I'm kind of in between. I'm not a huge grading guy, but I do grade things. I do have one book at PSA right now, and I did regrade my Superman 1 with CGC. So, like I said, good for them for clapping back. I like when companies stand up for themselves, but in hindsight, I'm going to say this to CGC and the CEO of CGC: be careful what you say, right? You're opening your mouth. You're putting your foot in your mouth. If you end up doing something in the future that kind of puts this notice on point and saying to people, you know what, we don't make mistakes, we don't do whatever, we have integrity. What happens if something happens in the future? So I just found it comical, but I think it's a good thing from CGC to kind of put themselves out there and say, hey, We want your PSA's business. So, and I recently have seen people come out who use PSA cards and even comics and say, We won't be submitting for a while. We'll see how long that lasts with everything that's going on." Um, Remains to be seen. But I thought that was comical that some of these bigger submitters were coming out and saying, "Hey, we're not going to be doing any more submissions." So, really weird considering, like, when all this stuff happened with CGC Comics, like, nobody said that. Not one person came on and said, "You know what? Uh, I'm not submitting anymore to CGC." Not that I remember. The bigger submitters. I'm not talking about like individuals because there were a few of those that said, "You know what? I'm not sending to CGC anymore." Blah blah blah. But the bigger dealers, stuff like that, none of them came out and said, "You know what? I'm not submitting anymore." So take that for what it's worth. I'm interested to see how this plays out in the future. Gen X says consolidation makes sense and it's a distraction. Derek Neiman in the house. What's going on? CC1139. Ultimately, me as a collector, which company employees are handling my books with care? Yeah, I mean, that's why we submit books, right? I mean, I don't want to get into the whole grading thing of why we grade, but for me, and I've always said this, is like, why do we grade books? It's to get a definitive value on our comics. That's it. There's no other reason to do it, in my opinion, right? Maybe you enjoy, cracking, pressing, and resubmitting. Maybe you enjoy finding raw books out in the wild, pressing them and sending them in, trying to get equity in your comics. Maybe that's it. There's no reason to kind of grade your books for protection. There's no reason to kind of spend that kind of money unless it's like a high value dollar book, because other than that, I think with where the prices are right now from both companies, which really are the same for the most part, it really costs a lot of money to send a book in to be graded. So, for me, unless you're kind of like a reseller, which I think most of us are at this point, that's really what the hobby has become, especially on Instagram, on eBay, some of the bigger dealers. Obviously, it's a different story, but if you're a reseller, I understand why you do it. But keep in mind, the cost to grade books is a fortune right now, and the only thing I would be grading are, in my opinion, $1,000 or more. But that's just me. And even then, I've heard from dealers and friends of mine who are saying, it's hard for me to sell a graded book right now. So what they're doing, if they're not like massive keys, because obviously the massive keys, people want peace of mind when they're spending a ton of money. They're cracking books out to sell them raw because they're moving faster. That's what I've heard from a number of people. I'm not going to name them, so don't even ask me because I'm not going to betray that trust. But I have heard it from dealers out there saying it's easier for me to move a raw book. So if I get a CGC book or a PSA graded book, whatever it is, if I can move it faster by cracking it out and grading it myself, I'll do that, and I'll leave it at that. So, you know, it is what it is. So I ask people out there, if you're gonna submit to one of these grading companies, what's the point in doing so unless you want that definitive value? Okay. So CC says, I grade my books to preserve. That's my main concern overall. But when you say preserve, obviously, like, there still could be damage to a graded book inside the wall, especially a CGC holder. We've seen that in the past. There's not too much data yet on a PSA slab if it could be damaged inside the holder. Still too new. And from the look of the case, I'm not saying that it could or couldn't happen. I don't know. Down the line, we'll really find out if that's the case. But from what I'm seeing right now, I don't think that's a high probability of that happening in a PSA case. But, you know, if you just grade your books and they come back to you fine and inside the slab everything looks good and you leave it in a short box or a long box and it's there and you don't touch it, you should be fine. But the same goes for a raw book. If you put a raw book in a short box and you never touch it, if you're a dealer and you're constantly bringing your stuff all over to shows and stuff like that, that's a different story. I understand that because there's a good chance that something may get damaged along the way. But as a regular collector who just kind of leaves your stuff in the bins, I'm going to question that because I don't really think it preserves anything. What's going on, everybody? MJ Comics, what's going on, brother? How you doing? Don't forget, guys, there's a link in the chat if anybody wants to pop on. Like, I kind of did this impromptu. I wanted to go live over the past couple of nights, but I really haven't had a chance, and I got about an hour or so. That's it. But I wanted to touch on a couple of subjects like that PSA buying Beckett, CGC's response, stuff like that today, and just kind of shoot the shit. That's it. Nothing else. We're live on IG and we're live on YouTube because I want to kind of branch out and stuff. This is like the third or fourth time I've done this. So And like always, I will take your questions. But next topic is PSA population report is live. Now, I know a couple of guys already did a video on this, including Ryan at Automatic Comics. He did a great video talking about, you know, some of the stuff that's already on there. So, is this a big deal? I want to ask everybody out there. Excuse me, that's the wrong slide. There we go. I want to ask everybody out there: is it a big deal to you that their pop report has gone live? I mean, it's nice to see. Don't get me wrong. I like how they've broken down Mark Schuler, some of the other stuff that's on there. That's great, but it's still too early for any real information, right? Maybe for niche collectors, like if you collect magazines, stuff like that, not comics, I could see it being a little more, um, what's the word I want to say? A little bit more useful right now, but I'm not even sure of that because I haven't checked in on it. But so to me, it's live, great, fantastic, another census. Uh, but at the end of the day, folks, the census for CGC is all messed up because of people cracking and resubmitting and not turning in the labels. So they're not true representations, 100% representations of all the books out there. I'm not saying they're far off because they're probably not for a lot of these books, but to me, it's nice to know how many are out there, but don't forget these numbers are a little skewed. And outside of that, I could care less. Like, you know what? It's just a number. It gives me a little bit of information to see what books are out there. But as I've said in all my videos that I do, especially when I do these hot lists, we already know copper and bronze, there are a ton of copies out there. I'm talking like 10 to 50,000 of books graded of each title, depending which they are. Minimum. Okay. And tomorrow, and not tomorrow, I did a video of the hottest comics of 2025, which are either going to release the day after Christmas or the following week. It's done already. It's ready to go. But you're going to see how many copies of books are out there, and some of the books that made the list, how many copies are out there as well. So uh, it's quite a lot of information to kind of divulge on some of these books, and maybe it helps others kind of understand where to put your money. Okay. Yes, we all love the bigger books like the 181s, the Giant Says X-Men 1s, ASM 129s, including myself. But when there's 30 plus thousand copies out there of these books, I'm throwing numbers out there at this point, but I know some of them are less than that, but there's still a lot of raw copies out there too. So you just got to be careful. So the data is not always the answer. And I'll put it that way. So that brings me to my next point. There we go. The hottest comics of 2025. As I said before, it's going to hit either Friday of next week or the following week. I'm just kind of figuring out when is the best time to release this video. Go Collect gave me a bunch of data. So shout out to them if they ever watch this, but I did give them a huge shout out in that video that they gave me so much data about how many books sold, how many copies sold, the high sale for each book, what was the grade with the highest number of sales. So like there was so much data I could take in. So shout out to them to kind of get a true list of what was actually selling in 2025. And not only that, I took it further. I said, you know what, let's go and look and see what's on the CGC census, how many copies of each of these books out there, and how many moved within the year. And that played a part in formulating the list as well. So it wasn't just like a list depending on how many copies sold. We have to factor in the available copies out there to be bought. And this is, of course, all the data that has been reported. We all know that, I can't really track, private sales, but everything that has been tracked is included in this list. And it's a doozy. You're going to really love this one. A lot of work went into this thing. It's a great video. I did make one mistake, which I already pinned in the comments. You'll see. But outside of that, it's a small mistake. And everything is accurate and ready to go. And there are some wild comics you're going to see on this list. It's going to be awesome. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with everybody else. So again, big shout out to Go Collect. That's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. So that's it, man. That's really the only things I really wanted to talk about. I got some blind bags here we're going to open. And again, I'll always take your questions. And if anybody wants to jump on, I'm saying this again, the beginning of the chat, there is a link if you want to pop in and just talk with me for a bit about what you're buying, what you're not buying, what you're seeing. We can talk about CGC, PSA. PSA turnaround time right now is a little ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, I submitted a book at New York Comic Con, and we're getting to January here. just a long time. And maybe that's part of the reason maybe they purchased Beckett. Maybe CBCS graders are going to help out. I don't know. They're operating as an individual company, they said. So regardless, I'm going to start cutting into these things and seeing if was able to pull anything that I like. So that's it. We're just hanging out on a Sunday. I'm not watching football today, like I said. Uh, Wanted to give you my opinion on some of the stuff that's been going on. So let's check out this first one. You always got to cut the side of these things, man. All right. What do we got? I would like one of those glow in the dark covers that I know MJ pulled. A lot of people have been pulling them. So let's see what we have. All right. So not a bad cover. Nothing crazy. I'm not a huge Virgin guy. I kind of like the trade dress on a lot of books, but no card inside, so that's a little disappointing. But not a bad cover. Pretty cool. So CC says drop the video a few days before New Year's Eve. I could do that. Like, I just want to make sure people are around to watch it, because obviously, if you guys are not familiar with YouTube, the more people that watch it in the beginning, the more it gets pushed out there to other viewers. So that's something I always think about. I got to tell you right now, Mondays are the worst days to release videos for me. Nobody watches them. So I'm probably not going to release videos on a Monday. Yeah, drop it after Christmas, but before New Year's. That's what I probably am going to do. I didn't know if I was going to do it the day after Christmas, if people were going to be home. I figure a lot of people would, but maybe they wouldn't watch a video, or I could do it. The problem is I already have a Tuesday and Thursday video. So I don't want to drop it on those days. So it's either going to be the day after Christmas, the Wednesday after, which is New Year's Eve. And I'm not sure I want to drop it on New Year's Eve either. So like it's really a crapshoot for me. CC City's food shopping. Buy something good for me, brother. Robo Smith, what is going on? How are you? We're getting into this next blind bag here. All right. There's nothing inside there. All right. So this is one I've seen a lot. Frankenstein. Getting a regular cover. Love this cover. The thing about Mark Spears, that is, the reason why I think his blind bags are so successful is because people are enamored with his art. Okay. I was thinking about this last night, and we talk about some of the greatest artists in our industry, like people I grew up with, like Todd. Obviously, I'm a big John Romita fan because he kind of revolutionized Spider-Man, and that's a Spider-Man I grew up with. But you look at some of the artists of the 90s, like Todd, like Rob Liefeld, some of these other guys. To me, Eric Larson is a guy I always loved as well. Didn't have as much success as some of the other two. Jim Lee is another one of those guys. But Mark's kind of approaching that level with these books and his artwork. And I think he's only like one creation away from being on that level of blowing up completely. He's extremely popular now, but I'm talking about long-term success where some of his books will always be resold for good amounts of money, right? Like the Todds, like the New Mutants 98, stuff like that. He needs to create a character. He needs to create a character that's going to be long-standing. And I think he's on the cusp of that. So if by some miracle he listens to this show and comes up with something, I think he's like, I always say this, he's an ass hair away from being like in that conversation with some of these guys, because I really enjoy his artwork, and I think a lot of people do. And I personally enjoy Universal Monsters. That's one of the attractions for me. Some people maybe not, but for me it is. But I think he's right there. He needs to create a character has some long-standing traction, and I think he'll be right there, recognized with some of those guys. We have a Christmas cover. There you go. Pretty cool looking deadly Santa Claus there with the girl being chopped off at the bottom. Man, that is freaking grotesque. Wild. But no special covers as of yet. Let me just check up on the chat real quick. MJ says he tries to release a video on Wednesday or Sundays. Find they work best for me. See, Sundays for me have been hit or miss. So that's what's good for someone is not always good for someone else. But Wednesdays, I think are decent for me as well. Gen X says I'm dropping my Crownsville book and interviews with Barnes and documentary director to compare comics to history in the new year. Very cool, man. Looking forward to that. Definitely message me when that comes out. Derek says, "Don't worry, Lawrence. I'll watch the Jets so you don't have to. Thank you. You may not even want to watch them, brother. Not a not not a fun watch these days." Robo Smith says, "I'm a Saints fan and I'm hoping that we lose for a better draft pick." At this point, I don't think I agree, but you already drafted a quarterback in the second round last year, so I don't think you're going to go after that. Maybe you are. I don't know, but we'll see. You know, I don't care who wins at this point. I don't really think it matters. I don't really like any of the quarterbacks that are coming out. That's everybody's in love with Mendoza. I'm really not. So, have you read the new Moon Knight? Does it seem like they're trying to turn him into a new absolute Batman? No, I have not read it, so I can't really comment on that. I don't really read a lot of modern stuff. Occasionally, like I've said before, if somebody recommends something, I will grab a copy and see if it interests me, but that's about it. MJ says he agrees with me. Let's cut into another one of these. But like I said, I like to ask anybody in the chat right now, are you buying any vintage comics or is it strictly modern? I think vintage is still on the decline is not the word, but it's very slow moving. Um, unless you're buying something, I mean, I can't speak for the eBay sellers out there, and buyers out there because it's kind of really hard to track for me what's selling on eBay unless you're kind of going on there and searching, which I'm not at the moment. There's just too much going on. But I feel like regular old vintage keys are really struggling right now still. So that's just me. Obviously, the blind bags, the absolute Batmans, that stuff is really hot, and I think it will continue to stay hot towards middle of next year. But what's going to be the thing to bring these vintage keys back? Is it going to be movies? Is it going to be Spider-Man No Way Home? I'm sorry, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Avengers Doomsday. I don't know. All right, so here's a cool cover. And is this a glow in the dark? I think it is. I like this cover, man. This is really cool. Really cool cover. I think it is a glow in the dark. Very cool. I believe it is. That's why it has the greenish tint. But finally, a nice pickup, man. I'm just checking for the card that's in here. I haven't gotten one yet, which I doubt I will. But last one, guys. All right. Last one, and then I'll get back to the comments. And I also think these blind bags are priced right? Some of these other blind bags that we've seen are way too expensive for me, especially when they're like a niche thing. Just really about the covers for the most part. I don't want to spend a lot of money on that stuff. If I'm spending money, it's on something that I like to have nostalgia for. So, and I kind of do a little bit with the monsters, but not a ton. So this feels like it could be a foil. Yes, it is. Not a crazy cover, but a nice looking foil. So I don't know how many of each are in. I don't know how many of each are in each one. I will say that I don't know if it says on the back of here. So 829 and 859 cardstock and foil. Really cool cover regardless. But we got a glow in the dark. We got a foil. 2 out of 5, but all 5 are great covers. That's pretty decent odds. For spending $30, I'll take that. All right. And of course, with my LCS, they always give me like a little bit of a discount, which is awesome too. If you spend enough money every time you go, which is cool. Robo Smith says the Saints need an O-line, defense, and receivers. Yeah, I hear you, man. You need a whole team. That's what it comes down to. The Jets don't need a whole team. They need some. I think their offensive line is pretty decent. They need a defensive tackle. I think they need another safety. They could definitely use another wide receiver. So other than that, and obviously they need a quarterback. That's the biggest thing. When you don't have a quarterback, it's kind of hard to win unless you have a dominant defense. Merry Christmas, Murph. Thanks for popping on with us here, brother. RoboSmith says he finds something I collect, Spawn and cover art, but if I see old Spider-Man, I'm definitely picking them up. Like, yeah, I started off by saying, like, I went to my LCS looking for Spectacular Spider-Man. I got to tell you, some of the art on that run in the 80s was absolutely phenomenal. There are some great, like I said, first appearances. There's a run with Morbius in that Spectacular Spider-Man, which is great. So and the best part is they're dirt cheap, man. My LCS had some for $2, $5, $10. They're dirt cheap. So I think now's a good time if you're a Spider-Man fan and you have all your amazings to kind of go after that Spectacular. Louis said he's rooting for Mendoza, but I'm being biased. Why? You an Indiana fan? MJ says, I'm buying both. I've got to film a video for next week on my top 5 pickups for this year. All right, I'm trying to go by memory because I watch most of your videos on what you bought, but is one of them a graded video game or this is only comics you're doing, MJ? Well, Father Son says glow in the dark have white protective paper on top. Every one of these had white protective paper on top. So I don't know. Is this not? I don't want to turn off the lights. Is this not a glow in the dark? Looks to me like it is because why would there be a greenish tint? But I could be wrong. But after this video goes, I'm gonna go ahead and test it out. That's for sure. Yes, it's the lady, MJ. Yeah, the foil you definitely could feel. That's always the hard part with the blind bags, making them have feel the same weight, etc. Uh, I thought about doing that last night, like going in and they had like a shelf of all of them on there, and I thought about kind of being an asshole and kind of feeling around, but there was definitely too many people in the store for me to do that, and I respect the owners too much to do that as well. Robo says Spider-Man 2 weeks ago on Whatnot. I was picking up a newsstand ASM below 200 and a whole mess of Peter Parker books, all newsstand for like $3 each. Yeah, man. Here's the thing. Like when I did my ASM run, a lot of those books should not be bought for more than like $5 a piece, certain books. Okay. Even the 70s run, even the stuff in the 70s, some of them are not worth money, man. I understand they're 50 plus years old, but they are not worth money. There's no key significance. There's still a ton of them out there. So people gotta like wake up when they're buying certain books. Like I understand if it's a super high grade, maybe you want to spend more, but I also don't see the value in that. If it's a non-key issue, why buy it, in super high grade? Because I feel like a lot less people are going to want to spend that kind of money on that book. Oh, he says attached white protective. Yeah, I don't see anything. So I guess this is not then. Either way, still a cool cover. CC says, I thought the same seeing the beard green it was glow in the dark. All right, so yeah, I guess it's not then. So why make it a greenish tint? I don't know. That's why it made me think it was glow in the dark. Yeah, no, man. I wouldn't do that. Do people actually do that? Take out a CT scanner and scan? Jeez, man. I saw some guys on, I don't know if it was Whatnot, they bought like cases and cases of the last blind bag, and they ended up pulling a ticket, a golden ticket, and it was just like, I wonder how much they spent in order to do that. I saw one of the golden ticket books, a 9.8 signed on eBay by Mark, and it's only right now at 2,000 plus dollars. So I don't know what it's going to finish at, but I could imagine they probably spent a ton of money buying up all the bags just to pull something that I don't know what the value is going to be down the line. We'll see if it's a one of one. That's why I said like he's so close to becoming like on the level of some of these other creators that if he gets there, like some of these one of ones could go for ridiculous money eventually. So too hard to say now though. MJ said his video were only comics and most of them are books I've not done videos on. I'm stepping away from doing a video on everything I pick up. People don't seem as interested anymore. Yeah, I agree with you, dude. I think haul videos to me are like one of the worst to watch now. Like other people, I think they're still doing them. I cannot watch them anymore, man, because I feel like since 2020, that's all people have done, right? So let me say hello to Victor Pelucci over on Instagram, the only person watching on Instagram right now. What's up, Vic? If you guys are not following him, make sure you do so. But yeah, I can't watch unboxings anymore. What is somebody going to unbox that I haven't seen before? That's the whole thing. Like if you're going to unbox something that I haven't seen before, that's okay. But if you're unboxing a Hulk 181, I've seen it. Now, I understand that some people this may be their dream book and they wanted to own this book forever, and I think that's awesome and come on and share it. So that's not what I'm saying. I get it. But in order for me to watch it, I have to see something that I have never seen before. That's kind of hard. Yeah, I believe it, man. I not just on Whatnot, but everywhere. Like I can't. That's why I can't get into the card space. There's too much nonsense that goes on between the. It's funny. You want to hear something? I recently did a video, and probably nobody watched it, but on this base trading cards, which is a Bitcoin trading card, and when I got on a voice call, I mean a video call with the CEO, he was basically telling me like he's like he had to go with this tamper proof kind of packaging because of all the shenanigans that go on, with card rips and stuff like that. So in the breaks. So I just I don't know. With the new stuff, I stay away from that stuff. If there were vintage cars that were like graded, I may be persuaded to buy something like that that I grew up with. Like I understand like a lot of the guys that I do follow in the card space, they'll go out and buy vintage, like, you know, Willie Mays cards, Mickey Mantle cards, stuff like that. So that I get. Like that's I could see myself getting into, but all the new stuff with all the shenanigans that go on, I don't have an interest in it. Obviously, I collect garbage pail kids, so it's kind of hard to, fake something like that. Even though I will say there are a lot of resealers going on. So if I was going to buy some packs, either they're going to be cheap or they're going to be graded. That's the way to do it. MJ says, I thought the Santa was glow in the dark when I pulled it as well. Okay. Yeah, man. You got me on that one. See, this is something I should have touched on as well today. Thoughts on CGC price increase? Will it ever stop? Will you still support CGC? So I came on here saying, like, good for CGC to come out and kind of go back at PSA and kind of come out and say something. But at the same time, I gave them a little bit of warning. You better not screw up either, right? Because once you come out and say something like that, like you screw up, you're putting your foot in your mouth. So we all know the kind of issues they've had in the comic space, not so much so in the card space yet. But I said this last year on Swag's end of year live stream. We had all of us on that this is going to be a yearly thing. They're going to raise prices every year from here on out. So be ready. I don't think anybody should be outraged anymore because when you do it twice in a year, like last year, they did at the end of year. This year, do we get another one before the end of 2026 is out? It's possible. I'm telling you right now, it's possible. But I expect them to raise prices every year. No question in my mind. It's going to happen every year, which means, guess what? If they do it every year, PSA is going to do it every year, right? They're going to use that as an excuse. One's going to do it, and the other one's going to do it. Say, hey, our competition is doing it, so we're going to do it as well. Will it ever stop? When people stop submitting their books in, it'll stop. That's the real answer. And for all the price increases, for all the issues they had, whether people are, cracking out their slabs and slipping books in, whether people are swapping out labels, whether people are faking their labels now we've seen, whether people who worked for CGC at some point are swapping books in, their own books in, and then taking other people's out. We've seen that as well. I mean, when will that stop? My answer is I don't know if it ever stops because there's a lot of shitty people out there in the world. So some of them are CGC's fault, some of them are really not. Like you don't know who you're hiring. If you hire someone and they're doing a good job and all of a sudden they're a bad person to decide to do something that affects your company, that that at the end of the day, is it your fault? No, but at the end of the day, it is, right? You hire that person. Is it CGC's fault that their cases could be easily cracked as someone else, would swap books in or fake labels? At the end of the day, they're not doing that, but they're also not fishing the issue with their cases. So it's kind of like, okay, but at the end of the day, people still submit their books, right? People still sending in books. They're not stopping. They want equity. They want the grade. They want to crack. They want to press. They want to resubmit to get that money. And that's what this industry has become, money. Nothing about the collecting, or I shouldn't say nothing. It's rare that we're talking about collecting when we're talking about grading comics. Okay, because I started off this video saying, you know what? I've heard from dealers telling me that it's easier for them to sell a raw book than it is to sell a graded one unless it's a massive key. Okay. And when I say massive key, I'm going to say $1,500 to $2,000 or higher. That's my, that's my massive key. Like there are a lot of great dealers out there that are reputable. They do a good job. They press, they clean themselves. They'll do it for you. They'll submit to CGC for you or PSA, wherever you want. But at the end of the day, it's all about money. And that's the only reason to grade a book. Because somebody said in the chat that they think that it'll preserve their comics. It will not. Somebody did a video recently about, UV light and how PSA has a 75%, I don't forget the number, UV protection or whatever that number was. I don't remember what it was. That's great. Don't get me wrong. I think that's phenomenal. But if you keep your books in a short box and never touch them, does it matter? Should you spend that extra money to go ahead and grade a book? For me, where I am now, I'm not doing that because I don't see the value. But maybe for a younger collector who maybe wants to get in the business of selling comics, maybe they think that's a good idea, and that's fine. But I'd like to ask all the people out there who submit, what's your CGC or PSA bill at the end of the year, and how much is your FedEx bill or your UPS bill at the end of the year from shipping, getting stuff back? It's a ton of money. If you do it regularly, it is a ton of money. If it's a business and it's deductible, great. That's a great deduction to have. If you're not and you're an individual doing this, that's a fucking lot of money to spend. And I don't think it's worth it. All right. Now, if you have a Superman one like I did, makes sense because you're assigning a value. Okay. If it's a certain dollar amount, like I said, you're assigning a value to that book. So I understand the need for it. Anything under, not worth it. If you're a modern collector and you're sending a modern books for a 9.8, I get it. But at the end of the day, if you don't get that 9.8, that book is practically worthless, right? So you're spending money to get that 9.8, but if you don't get it, you're just throwing that money away. That's my opinion. Okay. Uh, Anybody agree with me? Not agree with me? That's fine. 100%. You don't have to agree. This is just my opinion on stuff. Doesn't mean I don't like CGC. I've been on record for the past 4 or 5 years saying that I've never had an issue with CGC submitting, getting a book back. I think once I had a crack case. That's it. Other than that, I never had an issue. They never lost my books. They never improperly graded my books. If I disagree with something, maybe like a point, a half a point or a point off, not the end of the world. But outside of that, I never had an issue. So I'm not coming at you from a voice saying I've been displeased, because I haven't. It's just the amount of money it has gone to be to submit books is too expensive. Back in the day when it was like $15, $16, or like the max was like $50 for like a good $500 book, dude, I would do it, right? $1,000 book was like $60, whatever it was. I could see the value at that point. Now I can't. So I won't stop supporting them. I really would like to see them do something more for the community, especially in the YouTube space. I've been on record saying, I'd love to do something with CGC or PSA. I've actually approached PSA, didn't really get too much info or whatever, and that's up to them. That's fine. But you don't want to lose the people that have your back, and I'll put it that way. And I've been kind of upfront in a good way for both companies. So we'll see what happens moving forward. And I'll leave it at that. Robo says, I was watching the video. I'm sorry I got bored halfway through because I wasn't interested in that subject. I don't know what you're talking about, brother. I don't know what that means, but okay. I lost in moving my GPK uncut sheet from the G1. Ugh, I don't know what the hell that means. I lost. Oh, you lost your GPK uncut sheet when you're moving. That's what I get out of that. Series 1. That's some nice coin right there, brother. Derek says, when are you going to jump on the ungraded truth? Whenever they invite me to come on, man. That's the thing. I got to get invited, right? If I'm invited, I'll gladly go on. Give these guys my opinion. So whenever they want to invite me, I'll be there for them. Daniel Tobe, what's going on? My Xmas gift to myself. I plunged and won an auction for an X-Men 100 and a 9.8 as my favorite cover. Wow, that's got to be pricey. You don't mind me asking how much that was, Daniel? If not, that's okay. You don't have to relinquish that, but that is a nice gift. Congratulations. Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas. Excuse me. Happy Christmas. MJ says most services increase their prices every year. They do. And I don't think it's going to stop. So all the people that say they're outraged over it, you're not outraged over it. It's going to keep happening. You're going to keep sending your books in until you don't. But what was funny is that I know Swanks covered this on one of his videos. When CGC put out that statement about how they have integrity, the one I covered at the beginning of this video, All the people that commented on that post, "I'll never use anybody but CGC. I love CGC, blah, 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 blah." All great. I think that's great. You want to support them, want to say whatever. But again, if and when they put their foot in their mouth again, and they haven't done it on the card side yet, that's why it came from CGC cards. But if it does happen, all those people on that post, again, you're doing the same thing by coming out and saying that. So, it is what it is. So, you guys got to be ready for that as well. Especially some of them on there were like dealers. So, let me just say that. And we all know the speculation out there that dealers are getting better grades than everybody else. And again, I have no proof to that. It's just speculation, but that's a theory that goes on in the community, right? That the certain people get the higher grades, certain people get the 9.9. So when I see shit like that, that's what makes that's what it makes me think of. MJ he just 100% came out of the park with this one. He's 100% right. Comic grading isn't a necessity to the people. He's 100% right. There is no necessity to grading your comic books unless you want to know the value of it. That is it. That's the only reason to get books graded. You like it, that's great. That doesn't mean it's a necessity. He's right. So great point, MJ. It's not. So if you have the coin to be able to do so, you like grading your books, go for it. We're not saying you shouldn't, but is it necessary to do? No. If you know how to grade your book, if you want to go ahead and sell it, and you could do that, but most people who at the end of the day are collectors, they don't go and sell individual books. I think most people sell their collection at one shot, right? That's what most people do. That's the feedback that I've gotten from regular graders. There are collectors out there who obviously have eBay accounts, they have IG accounts like me, and I'll sell individual books. I don't think that's the majority. Okay, so I don't see the need for it. He's 100% right. Murph says these companies just print money. 100%. And I actually was on record saying this, like, as I think CGC will be sold in the next few years. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying to who. I don't know who. I don't think it'll be PSA. I don't think they'll ever let that happen. But I think over the next couple of years, CGC will get sold again. But remains to be seen. I'm on record saying that. Like, I don't know when the space kind of dies out even more, and there's no more money to print, or they've gotten to a point where they've raised prices where the amount of books being sent in is not what it used to be, they will get sold. That's just my opinion, and they get sold off for parts. But we'll see. That's my opinion. I'm not sure, I don't have a crystal ball, but that's what's in my mind. CC says, "What's the bulk era of books that get graded?" I'm pretty sure that's easy way to tell if there's a drop in grading. I've always asked CGC, and I wish they kind of put that out and let us know what's being graded. Um, Obviously, if keys are graded, I understand. If there are non-keys getting graded, that's a different story. Personally, I think there are more modern books getting graded than anything else. It's just an opinion. I have no fact on that. There's no proof of that. But I think the most books getting graded are the cheaper submission rates, and they're more modern books. So they're the people trying to get 9.8 of books, stuff like that. Um, I don't know. If anybody knows a way to tell, please drop it in the chat. Let's talk about it. But I don't think there is. Roba says graded books are too heavy. I would rather stick with my raw copies in the home. I don't want any graded books. My collection is for me. I will say this: if you ever go to sell your books, you will get more money for graded books because there's definitive value there. So if you have, let's say you have 6 long boxes of raw books, and there's no definitive value. Someone has to go through every book to see what exactly they're worth, check out the grades, do their own due diligence. Most people don't want to take the time to do that. And you're just going to give you an amount of money. Say, here, I don't have the time to do this shit. This is what I'm willing to pay, blah, 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 blah. If they're graded, they're easily, they can go on GPA, they can go on Go Collect to see what the values are, and then actually get a definitive value of what they're actually worth at the time. That's the value in grading all your books, is at one point you have that monetary value attached to them. Mark Spector Comics, what's going on? I was just asking in general, what's the average amount of money that people spend on comic books in a year? I'd wager on saying that 90% have no clue. People should have a clue of what they spend. But I also think that varies from collector to collector, right? Not everybody out there is going to spend a ton of money on comics every year. There are certain collectors going to spend like 50,000 or more on comics a year. There are certain collectors that maybe spend only like $1,000 on comics a year or more. So it really depends what you're buying, depends on the collector. I would like to hear from everybody out there what they think they've spent in 2025 just to compare, collector to collector. I wouldn't have to, I wouldn't, obviously I wouldn't call out your handle or anything, but it really varies because there are a ton of collectors who like go on, they're on IG every night buying books. So, and some of them were buying big books, so they must have a lot of cash. Some people are kind of thrifty. Like me, I've gotten very thrifty in what I buy now. So I rarely spend money on books anymore, but I'm in a different situation where I've kind of bought everything that I've wanted to own for the most part. And unless I see something that I've never seen before, I'm not going to be buying much. Murph says, I own 4 blue label graded books. I also own 125 yellow label books. I love the signature series. The price hike to $53 a book just took me out of the hobby onto sketches now. I totally understand. I thought, Murph, you told me that you were selling off your collection. I remember last time we spoke, you're going to be at King Khan and you're selling some stuff off. Maybe it wasn't the majority, but I have to ask you, 125 yellow label books, are they modern books? Are they vintage books? Because that I think makes a difference as well. Any of these like artists that you want to hang on to for a long time, or is just something you've had a pleasure to meet each artist and you kind of, got the signature, stuff like that? Oh, I got you, Roba. He was talking about the crypto cards. Yeah, well, I kind of figured like a lot of comic guys weren't going to be interested in that, but the company kind of approached me. I said, yeah, I made them aware, like, I would rather kind of talk about these cards inside a regular video that I do because it would get more eyes on the video, but they wanted a standalone one, which is fine. That's what they want to do. So Daniel, he says $3,500. All right, man. 9.8 X-Men 100. That's awesome, brother. If you're happy, I'm happy. Yeah, I got that, MJ. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Merry Christmas to you and your friend as well. Your family as well, excuse me. Vinny Willock, what's going on? This is an impossible question for me to answer. How much do you think CGC would sell for today? I don't remember what it was purchased for, so I can't answer that. But it would definitely sell for more than it would back then. Not even because of inflation, because of the JSA acquisition. That's a huge get for me. Huge get, because I think eventually they're going to open that up to more items. Obviously, JSA, authenticate signatures for a lot of items, but maybe CGC down the line is going to bring in other collectible items that they're going to have graded and also JSA verified. So to me, like their valuation, I couldn't put a number on it, but it's definitely gone up a lot because of JSA. So he's saying there was a $500 million investment. That's what it was purchased for. I couldn't even imagine. The JSA has definitely gotten more than that. But here's the thing. I'll say this before. I said this before. When things start to go awry in the company, and when I say like people stop submitting as many books and the prices have gotten too much, they're going to get less money for the company. So if they're going to do this, they better sell at the height, not in the decline. Because again, we know PSA is having some issues right now, but at the end of the day, I think PSA is more of a valuable company right now, right? And if PSA starts to get going, they start to take market share away from CGC. And I'm not saying they're going to, because I don't think that's the case. I really don't. But let's just say it does happen. CGC will, I don't want to say be worthless, but it will turn into CBCS, and we don't want that. So I do think from a business perspective, you want to sell at the height, not on the decline. So Robo says he spends $500 a month. So what is that? Times 12. What is that? 6 grand a year? Not too bad. I don't think. Depending on the collector. I'd like to hear everyone out there how much they spend a year. And this is just on comics, right? We're not talking about all the other shit that we buy, like toys, cards, whatever. This is just comics. So like if you add everything together, I can imagine how expensive the shit gets. Murph says, I spend about $7,000 a year on cigarettes and alcohol. You got me for a second. I was like, oh, $7,000 a year on comics. That's not bad. But then he says cigarettes and alcohol. Wow. Alcohol. Okay, man. You got to stop smoking, brother. We need you around in this community. We can't have you something happening to you. Chef, what's going on, man? I see you on Instagram. I'm sorry. I'm only paying attention to the YouTube stream. I should got to be paying more attention to the Instagram when I'm doing the duels. But we got me for about 20 more minutes, guys, and I got to go start and cooking dinner for everybody. Early dinner. Kid has a basketball game at 4 o'clock. MJ, good seeing you, brother. I'm sure I'll see you before the holidays. Or I'll talk to you before the holidays. He says, Mark says, hell yeah, Murph. Got to enjoy your life somehow. I get it, man. I'm with you. I've kind of cut down my alcohol consumption only because got to a point where I was drinking almost every night just to kind of relax. So I get it. I do. But at the end of the day, alcohol is like one of the worst things that you can do, my friend. And I know it's hard to stop because sometimes you just want to fucking relax. And it's one of the things to do. And I'm sure smoking is the same way. But $7,000, brother. Jeez. Derek says exactly. Blackstone bought them in 2021 when the future looked bright. Prices were pumping. Everyone was submitting everything. They had no competition. Now subs are way down and PSA is here. So let me ask you something, Derek. How do you know that subs are down? I assume they are as well, but how do we know that they're down? Is that the reason you think they're raising prices? I would love to see both companies should put like a tracker in how many submissions for the year or the month. I would love to see that. I think that would be a unique tool. I know there's no way in hell they're going to do that because they're just putting their business out there. But like when these publicly traded companies report, they should report how many books get graded, how many cards get graded. I would like to see that. I think that would be a riot. Not I know it's not going to happen, but that's just me. Rubus says cover art. I'm always going for get Kirby, McFarlane, Lee, etc. Yeah, man, that's who we all grew up with. I mean, I didn't grow up with Kirby, but he's the GOAT, right? So any great Jack Kirby art, you want to, of course, buy it, especially if it's on the cheap. CC says making veal cutlets, then I'm making chicken cutlets. So there you go, brother. I'm with you. And then I make like a cheese pasta sauce. It's actually really, really good. So we'll do that tonight as well. But I usually don't eat this early on a Sunday. Usually we eat a little early, but like I said, kid got a basketball game. But we got about 20 minutes and I'm gonna let you guys go. But again, I wanted to come on and talk about all this stuff because I didn't really get the chance to make a video. Like I know a bunch of guys made videos on the scandal. They made videos on the CGC response. And I've got to a point where at this channel, like I'll cover certain those news things, but I really want this channel to be something else. I want it to be active for collectors, nostalgia, to show you things, to be able to cover things, to be able to work with other businesses out there who want to promote their products and bring those products to you guys. That's really what I want to do. The podcast is still going. I haven't been able to get a couple of guests that I wanted to get on, even though after they told me they would. I don't know if they're scared or whatnot. I may hit them with some hard questions, but I will get the podcast going again. I've reached out to a few other people who have agreed to come on. And I think after the new year, we'll start with the podcast again with some really great guests, which I'm really excited about. Mark says that's a fair estimate a month over month on grading collectibles. Yeah, I mean, so was that 500 a month on buying or grading? And does that factor in if it's on buying, does that factor in on the cost as well, right? So Mark, let me ask you, are you submitting to CGC or PSA right now? And how much do you think you've spent over the year just on grading, not on buying comics, but on grading itself? So I don't know how many of you are into action figures, but AFA just announced that they're opening up their loose figure submissions for grading, which I thought was interesting because I thought a while back they kind of scaled back on grading loose figures and now all of a sudden they're opening it up again, which is wild to me. That may suggest that maybe the toy grading has kind of been in decline and they're opening up to other things. I know the wait times are outrageous for toys, but I thought that was interesting as well when they posted that because maybe grading toys right now is taking a little bit of a hit and I don't have any information. That's what it made me think when I saw it. But I don't know if anybody out there grades toys. It's incredibly expensive as well because they have to get custom cases and stuff like that to fit the toys that you want to submit. So, Mark, you said you posted a website. I didn't see a website in the chat. So, if you could repost that again, I did not see any website come up at my end. So, please do so. Mark says he hasn't submitted a single book all year. Good for you, brother. Save that cash. Buy books. Are you buying books? I'm assuming you are. The He-Man movie is coming out in June of 2026. So I can't wait for the trailer. I really thought we'd see it already. I'm hoping Christmas Day. It's another kind of rumor out there, Christmas Day. If not, I think it's going to be the Super Bowl. But I think Super Bowl is kind of cutting it close because you're already in February at that point and the movie's in June. So 4.5 months is cutting it close for one trailer. There's got to be soon. It has to be soon. Murph, I actually reached out to the fucking defects to come on the podcast, and they said they're too busy. Matt, of course, got a young one at home now, and Butch just said he got promoted, so at work, so that's why they're not making really a lot of videos anymore. But I tried to get them on, man. I try to get them on. I see them all the time at shows. We talk when I get to see them, so I would love to shoot the shit with those guys. Trust me. Derek says, yeah, you can track submissions with the census. Yeah, okay. Peak boom, CGC was grading about 6,000 to 7,000 blue labels per work day. Wow, that's insane. This year, they're about 3 to 4,000 blue labels per workday. So that's just about half. All right, so let me ask you this. So we know they're doing 3 to 4,000 blue labels a day. And that doesn't include all the restored books that get graded, which I'm sure there's not many because I think a lot of those are moderns, like I said. Or I shouldn't say a lot. I should have said a majority, or the majority are moderns, in my opinion. So where do they have to get in order to say, oh, we're in trouble and we want to sell and get out? Derek, I'm asking you and I'm asking everyone out there, where does that number have to go? 1,500 to 2,000 or more than that? Because if they have that big drop now, I mean, it's already cut in half since the peak. I mean, did it have to get cut in half again? I feel like that's already too late, right? If you do that, unless they're getting sold off for parts, which is possible as well. Campbell 1654, welcome aboard. So do you think the CBCS graded books will continue to drop in value with the sale of the company? Yeah, 100%. That's why I see no reason to keep CBCS going, right? They're saying they're keeping Beckett as an independent company, but no mention of CBCS. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I would just kind of dismantle it. Honestly, if you want to take any graders from CBCS and bring them over to PSA, that's what I would do. And obviously the head uh, grader now is over at PSA. So is there anyone over at CBCS that they may want to bring over? Why keep CBCS going? I can't see the value in that at all. I don't know how many books they're grading. I can't see it being a lot. But at the end of the day, those books are losing value every day they go up for sale in the secondary market. So why keep it going? It's not a brand right now that's giving you any value to your dollar. So I questioned it when I saw it. So the purchase has to be more on the Beckett side of things, whereas for the cards, that does still have a little bit of value in my eyes, but even then, it's not much. Oh, Derek says they automatically remove links in the chat. So Mark, DM me like the link you're talking about on Instagram or something, and I'll take a look at it. So Mark says definitely he's bought raw and graded books this year. I think a lot of us have. I bought only raw books this year, only because the graded books I want to buy, like they're high dollar value books, and I don't really, not really looking for anything right now. For me to buy something big, I'd have to sell something big, and there's not really anything I want to get rid of in my collection. I can't really spend any more money on stuff like that. Derek says, keep in mind, PSA grade is like 1.5 million in cards per month. Not saying they can get there with comics, but they certainly have the infrastructure to handle that volume. Agree. And I'm wondering how this scandal now is going to affect that number. Do we know how many cards CGC grades a month? I'm sure there was a visual put out not that long ago. I remember that. I don't remember what the number was, but there was quite a substantial drop off from PSA to CGC. And I'd like to know over the next couple of months what that number is going to look like, right? Because of everything that's going on, that maybe give us a more of an inkling into how that's going to work. But I will say this, like the cards could be the saving grace for CGC going forward if the submissions for comics start decreasing, right? As prices go up, and this is for both companies, as prices go up, the less likely it is that people are going to send in, especially with comics, because it's not like manufactured rarity like cards. Like modern cards is manufactured rarity. Comics is not like that. It is with certain modern books, 100%. But I think that the high dollar value books that are being sent in, uh, obviously there's there's more scarcity to that, but there's not enough people doing so. And I'll leave it at that. All the 9.8 stuff, the moderns that come in, that's where I think the majority of the stuff that's getting submitted. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that, man. Derek says Lawrence agree. I think they keep BGS for cards to the name recognition and Black Label, and for the comments, I bet they dissolve CPCS. Yeah, I agree. There's no reason to keep it around. The one thing I'll say for BGS is that for how long are they going to keep them around? Right? How long are you going to keep them operating as a separate entity until they find a way to integrate that style and that the Black Series into PSA? I wonder how long that's going to take. I don't see this keeping it as a separate entity for long. Max a year. That's my guess. A year to year and a half. And I'm not the guy to talk about this. I'm not the card guy. Neo and the sports card dad are the two guys that I think probably I'd go to get that answer before me. So maybe I can get them both on and we could talk a little bit more about that stuff. But I don't really cover a lot of that on the channel, only because I think for the sports card side of things, there's just so much going on that for me to cover that plus everything else that I cover, I'd really be doing a disjustice. All right, so there you go. So CGC is about a fourth, roughly a fourth. The cards is about a fourth per month as PSA. It's interesting. We should keep an eye on that and see if that goes up for CGC and down for PSA. I think people are full of shit because at the end of the day, if your card is worth more money in a PSA holder, that's what people are going to do. But we'll see if that changes as well. We talked about that with comics, or if our PSA values for comics gonna be on par with CGC, and so far they haven't. I did a video. Swags did a video on it. The comics have definitely on certain sales have been good, and on certain sales have been really bad. The one I noticed the most was that ASM 300, that $1,700 and change sale. That was horrific. That was not good. But there were a couple of books that sold that were right on par with CGC. So I don't really follow the logic in that. I think it's still too early to tell, but I will say this. If PSA wants to stay in the game comics wise, they got to get their values up on comics across the board. Across the board. If they don't, I think eventually they'll turn into CBCS when it comes to comics. And I will say this. What happens if PSA wants to acquire CGC because of that fact? I don't think they'll ever let that happen because to have one grading company do everything, they'll never let it happen. I don't think they'll ever. Nope. But it would be wild because no one would have a choice. You have to send it there now until some other bullshit grading company starts and people start submitting to them. But it's interesting to see how this is all going to unfold, right? There's definitely a lot of factors going in, but we'll see. It's too far to tell, but when CGC is in trouble or PSA Comics gets in trouble with the submission volume not being what they think it should be, then we'll see. Well, I want to see who has the balls to decrease prices first, and that's how you're going to get business. I always thought it was stupid for a lot of these companies to keep raising prices because CGC obviously gets a demand for comics, but why would you raise? If I were PSA, why am I coming out of the gate being higher priced, right? I want people to submit to me over other places. The reason people were submitting to CBCS and some of these other companies was they're less expensive. So I understand the value for PSA is there. The name is there. And I said that on the podcast I did, is that why devalue your product? I get that. But down the line, if PSA starts to struggle, and I'm not saying they're going to do so with the cards because I still don't believe that, but with the comics, if the values become beneath CGC's values, they're going to lose people submitting. That's just the answer. It's no question in my mind. So at that point, will they reduce prices? CGC, if they start to lose volume of submission because it costs too much to submit books, or people realize that I'm sending these books that they're so common that they don't really need to be graded, and people are still wanting to buy raw, do they decrease prices of books, or maybe they just run specials? We've seen them do that in the past. It's interesting to see how it's all going to play out. I think the first person, if it becomes an even playing field, the first person to decrease prices will get some submissions. I'm telling you right now. Like, I definitely think it's a smart business move to kind of like, we're running a Christmas special. Anything you kind of send in, we're going to give you a 25% discount. I think that's a smart business decision. Okay. I know companies don't like to do that, especially when they're public, to kind of allow things to kind of come in at a reduced rate. You look at a company like Apple. Apple is notorious for this. They never reduce prices. The only time you get is on Black Friday. They give you like a minuscule percentage off on things. It's really minuscule. It's like a $50 off $1,000 item. That's it. They don't give you shit. So I understand their thinking, but when something like this, when it's not necessary, even though we don't can, I guess we could compare it to Apple, where a lot of this shit's not necessary either, but we still upgrade our iPhones, still buy iPads, still buy Macs, stuff like that. But it's different because people can collect something without it being graded, and still get that same experience. So I get it, but I think the company that endears itself to collectors more is going to win. And I want to see one of these companies do that, but they've been, I don't want to say afraid to do that, but they haven't done it. And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. We got about 5 minutes, guys, and I got to jump off. CGC Signature Series evens. CGC Signature evens brought people in also. Some people can't get to cons and what every other reason. So it's easy to submit your books to your favorite artist. I get it. That's a draw right now that PSA doesn't have, right? You could submit your books to get signed, but that's a big deal. Signature series and JSA, even authentication is a big deal for CGC. I said that. That's really where I think they're gonna win the battle when it comes to that stuff. But at the same time, the amount of money it costs to do so is a lot. So I don't know. I'm not the guy to send in books to get signed, so I'm not the guy to answer that. But I do understand a lot of collectors out there do that now. For me, you know, there's very few artists I want a signature for unless I'm going to meet them in person and do it myself. And even then, I'm not going to submit it to get graded because I don't want to spend the money. It's just about me having that that experience meeting that artist and getting a signature. But I understand I'm not like most collectors. Murph says during COVID time, CBCS was always at the cons. CGC went to facilitators. I have 50 CBCS books because they were present. I didn't want to pay extra for the facilitators. I get it. I agree with you. Last couple of years, they haven't been at any con. The last time I saw them at a con was New York Comic Con, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the year that they changed their label. Too little, too late, right? Should have done this like the 5 years prior that I approached someone about doing it. They didn't want to hear it. So, you know what? You lost. That's why, like, I'm in the medical field and I used to work for a bigger company. And to get anything done, there was so much fucking red tape that I couldn't do it. I said, you know what? I have the answer. My answer is right. This is what we should be doing. And just to get it to a point where someone would listen to what I have to say, months and months would go by and all this red tape and going through 15 different people just to get an answer. It's not worth it. That's the answer. So I understand it. And with these companies, that's why I said, you know, I wish they were more transparent. I wish they were kind of listen to collectors more, but they have been unwilling to do so. And I'll leave it at that. Yes, PSA has definitely approached some of these other influencers. I'll put it that way. I don't like the word influencers with some of the other people in there, but I don't think that's always the mass. And I'll leave it at that. Hurricane, you're showing up and I'm about to get off, brother, but thank you for popping in with the $5 super chat. Canadian, what up? You know, I've been on a bit of an EC tear past few weeks. I got Crime Suspense Stories 20, 22, Weird Science 16. What other heavy hooters should I get? For me, I picked up a Crime Suspense Story 17 this year. It's really the covers, right? If you, whatever covers are really drawn to you from the pre-code horror genre. Obviously, that's a big one. Give me a second, folks. I got to answer something for work. All right, folks. I got to run. Unfortunately, a work duty thing calls, but Hurricane, to answer your question, buy whatever cover you're really drawn to. Okay. I'm drawing a blank right now. The one with the bone with the glass in front of her face. Sorry, I'm losing it. But you know the one I'm talking about. But I got to run. I have a work thing I have to deal with, guys. So again, I will chat with you guys.